Go ahead and let's go ahead and let staff get things ready.
Mayor's live.
We're live. Okay. All right, it is 9:30. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, is there any discussion? If there's no discussion in the minutes, then I will make a motion to pass the minutes as they are presented.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to pass the minutes. All in favor of said motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 8.
Is there any discussion on the consent agenda items 1 through 8?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to pull item number 5.
Item number 5 will be pulled. Is there any further discussion on consent agenda items 1 through 8 with the exception of item 5? If there's no further discussion, then I will make a motion to pass items 1 through 8 on the consent agenda with the exception of item 5.
Second.
Motion has been made and then seconded. All in favor of said motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes do have it. Chair recognizes Vice Mayor Johnson for discussion on item 5 of the consent agenda.
Thanks, Mayor. I need to abstain from this item because of a potential conflict of interest.
Let the record show that the Vice Mayor will be abstaining from the vote on item 5 for a potential conflict of interest. Is there any more discussion?
What exactly is the conflict of interest?
Conflict is these are CDBG funds, and my wife is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity, and I need to abstain from all federal funding through CDBG.
So that's ongoing, because this has nothing to do with Habitat, but just because it's CDBG.
Yeah, we've also reallocated CDBG funds in the past back towards housing. So if I vote to approve this and at some point we reallocate those dollars back to affordable housing.
Yeah, no, I get that on the housing. I just didn't see how it was relevant here, but I guess, does legal agree? Okay. All right.
Is there any more discussion on item 5? It's Dunbar Theater contract amendments. If there is no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the to accept staff's recommended action. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and then seconded. All in favor of said motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Again, please let the record show that the Vice Mayor has abstained. Madam Clerk.
Report of Board of Bids and Contracts dated July 26, 2021.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Hannah
Morning.
Lake Department of Finance, here to present the July 26 Board of Bid recommendations. First engineering bid we have is paving Kellogg Crossing and Country Hollow second editions. This was deferred from July 20th City Council. Recommendation is Kansas Paving for groups 1, 2, and 3 for an aggregate total of $391,925. Hoover Road Multi-Use Path Phase 1, recommendation is Kansas Paving for $378,093. This is the purchasing procurement website, as well as our current open request for proposals. That is the Board of Bid recommendations. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions of staff? See none. Is there any further discussion? If there's no more further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. Members will respond by saying aye if they're voting yes, and nay if they're voting no. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The ayes do have it. Madam Clerk.
Petitions for public improvements.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The petitions for your consideration this morning represent 100% improvement district for each petition and also are valid per Kansas statute. The first new petitions are for a development north of Central, west of Meridian, Kimberly Addition. Projects will provide water, sewer, and drainage improvements required for a new residential development. Revised petitions include those from Monarch Landing 5th Edition, north of 21st Street North, west of 159th Street East. In July of 2017, City Council approved petitions for water, sewer, and paving improvements for this addition. The developer has since submitted revised petitions with revised budgets to meet current market conditions, and again, that's for water, sewer, and paving. We also have revised petitions for Pike Addition Phase 3, east of 167th Street West and north of Maple. In June of this year, the City Council approved a petition for sanitary sewer improvements. The developer submitted a revised petition to cover the costs of bidding this privately. Again, that's for Pike Addition Phase 3. With that, staff recommends City Council approve the revised and new petitions and budgets, adopt amending resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Is there questions for staff? There's no questions. Is there discussion on the item? If there's no discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the new and revised petitions and budgets, adopt the new and amending resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor of said motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The ayes do have it. Madam Clerk,
Councilmember appointments and comments.
are there any appointments to boards at this time? Councilmember Claycomb.
I have an appointment, reappoint Deborah Foster to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission.
Other appointments? Councilmember Fry.
Yes, Jill Kirshen to the Access Advisory Board and Nick Penner to District 5 Advisory Board.
Further appointments? There's no further appointments. I'll make the motion to accept those appointments.
Second.
Motion has been made and then seconded by the Vice Mayor. All in favor of said motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion does pass. Returning now to council member comments. Is there any comments at this time? I'd just like to recognize that we have State Senator Mary Ware with us today. Thank you. And I believe that's the only other elected. So with that, if there's no further comments, then I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and then seconded. All in favor of said motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion to adjourn passes, and we will jump right into our workshop. The chair recognizes City Manager Layton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today for you, we have three group presentations. There'll be multiple presenters on each item. The first one is a presentation to discuss the master plan, the final master plan for Clapp Park, and Troy Houghton will lead that off. And then we've got two other items, one dealing with recommended changes in our core ordinance, and the last in terms of an update on some social justice initiatives that we've had in our police department and municipal court. So with that, I'll turn over to Troy to talk about the Clapp master plan.
Good morning. How you guys doing today, Mayor,
Good
Council?
morning, sir. Thank you for being with us.
So I have a great presentation for you guys today. It's been a long, hard journey to get to this point in regards to getting to the master plan for Clapp Park. As you recall, after we had closed, actually before we closed Clapp Park, we actually performed a workshop with a lot of stakeholders to find out what kind of foundations do we want to reimagine the park. And we went through a lot of different processes to go through that, a lot of public engagement. And from some of the Hyatt funds, we were able to procure the master plan, Confluence to actually do the master plan for us. So today I have Confluence that's going to present the master plan. From Confluence, I have PJ Novak and Hank Myers to make the presentation, and we're going to be here to go through all the details of what it could look like, and they're going to share some great ideas, and we're also going to be here for any questions as well. So I'll pass it over to PJ.
Good morning, everyone. PJ Novak with Confluence. We're landscape architects and planners out of Kansas City. With me is Hank Myers with our firm. I'd like to first of all thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today and also the opportunity to develop the master plan over the almost last 2 years. We started in late 19, and then our world was turned upside down in 2020. Took a few months off, and then we were able to kind of reinvent the process with our team and got an enormous amount of public involvement. So what we'll do this morning is I'll take you through the process we went through, including public input, and identified kind of the general park outline as far as what we foresee the park. Then Hank's going to go into some more detailed descriptions of the major use zone areas, and then we'll go through what we see as the cost estimate for the entire park, and then answer any questions you may have. So first of all, it's not here. First of all, our process. We led the team. We're the prime lead. We were responsible for the site design and also a lot of the community outreach. Our architectural partner was GLMV, and they helped us envisioning the architectural elements of the project. And also we had the Gredeman Group helped us with art, envisioning how to work art within the park. But then also Sonia and her team were a great help in getting information from the public with that. So I think that's important to point out. Civil Environmental Engineering and Survey was GSI and Bauman Engineering. And then our fourth partner is Operations and Management, it's Pros Consulting. So Leon and his firm was on to take a look at the program we're developing and how that relates to business management, how that relates to potential income generation within the park. So all those together, I think, is what is responsible for developing the solid recommendations we have. As far as the process, well, we started back in March of 2020. We had the Walk the Park workshop. This is basically staff and our team walked the entire park, took notes, came back to the existing golf clubhouse, kind of gave our perceptions of what we thought. That kind of gets us all in the basic understanding of what the palette we had to deal with. Then we, in July of last year, we had a Facebook town hall discussion. So we hadn't started any design yet. We merely said, here's what we've got. Here's some ideas as far as potential programming elements. It's great online documentation with that. It was really, really helpful to us to get things going. With that then, after that, then we had a Facebook Live presentation. So we actually had some initial concepts that went through. And with that, we had over 350 active views during that. And a total of, from the start until I guess today, or the most recent days, over 3,000 views of that presentation online, which is just, to us phenomenal. And we had a total of 192 comments. On top of this, when COVID slowed us all down, we put out an online community survey, and we had reached out to the hospitals, reached out to the neighborhoods, reached out to anywhere we could with that, and in that we had 981 responses to the survey, which in our business is just absolutely phenomenal that you had that many people who would take the time to sit down and go through it and give us their comments. So when you take a look at that, it's really phenomenal. Then back in October last year, we had a bike pedestrian committee meeting with that. We had about 20 people on that. And then we had the Parks Board meeting with SCMAC Design. We had about 25 people on that. So we had a lot of people checking in and keeping up with the process, which is great. So I think that tells you we really were able to get in and get people engaged in envisioning what the project could be. As I said, we had the survey done, and I want to point out a couple things before we start getting into the details. So this was a listing. You see the blue tones here and the orange tones. The blue tones mean when people were asked that question, they felt that question was very important, and the orange tones mean somewhat important. So you can see here, when you start combining the orange and blue, people wanted natural green spaces to remain in the park. And then when you look at the dog park area and perhaps a cafe, over 500 people wanted that. Climbing boulders, you can see the amount of folks who felt that was important. A sledding hill, well over half the group. On down through coffee shops, shade and pavilions. There's a lot of people. It's a shade structure and picnic tables was popular. Food trucks ranked very high. Affordable rental facilities and community activity centers. So keep those in mind. So I think as we start explaining the master plan, you'll start seeing how some of those elements came in and actually show themselves. And survey responses, how would you use the transformed Clap Park? The first one is grab some produce at a farmer's market. 489 responses out of those 981. Move away from my screen and soak up some nature. 397. Picnic with a friend. Get some exercise hiking around the park. Play with my kids at the playground. So you can see all those. So those start telling us what elements are rising to the top that we should consider in the planning. So I will now orient you just overall. So this is the overall plan. As you can see, Harry on the top of the screen here, Oliver to the right, Meadow Lane, and then Bluff. So you can see we have basically four areas of the park. We have what we call, this is the entryway coming off Harry and it connects back over to Oliver Street. This area we call here's what we call the promenade. It's a public gathering space, has many uses in it, from a farmer's market to a cafe, which we will get into that detail. At the end of the promenade, we have an activity center. That would be a large nature-based playground. So something that is not just the platforms and elements. It's more so the kids can have more creativity in what they're doing, rocks, climbing walls, maybe slope slides, those type things. And then also a water play area. We see this water play area as something different than is currently in Wichita. So it's more nature-based. So the kids, there's bubbling rocks, there's maybe a babbling brook, an opportunity to kind of introduce the kids to the stream that they see running through the park. And more importantly, it's one of those facilities that when the water's not on, it still has play value to the kids, so it's a kind of a year-round use, but we see this as a much bigger, active, fun area, so it's the kids, you kind of blur where it's play and where it's nature with that. Then as we come down to this area, we kind of call this a bit of a neighborhood park in through this area over by Bluff Street, and then an active athletics area over along Oliver Street. Then you can see the vast amount of green space we have here where we've got the disc golf and lots of walking paths and opportunities for picnic pavilions to be placed. And these are a few aerials we'll show you here. This is looking southwest, so you can see here as we're coming in, we've got the entry into the park. Here's the promenade area. Down through here, here's the nature play and the water play. The athletics area through here, the nature or the neighborhood, kind of the neighborhood niche here, and then all that green space that's coming through, and then the entryway into the park. Then again, this is looking southeast, So as you can see here, here's the entryway coming in with the promenade, amphitheater space. Then we're down into the nature play and the destination playground with the neighborhood activities off to the right-hand side, and then the active spaces, the athletic spaces within there off to the upper left side. So the master plan overview, so as we go through this, we'll be showing you three different areas. Right now, I'm going to go through what we call kind of the general park areas. So first of all, here we are at Bluff Street. So this is our neighborhood area. So what we see here, we see this as a neighborhood playground, a smaller playground, so it's adjacent to all the residential, that kind of that walk-in group or bike ride-in group. With that, we had the idea that a small park pavilion can be down through here, so you can bring the kids. Maybe if you've got a young one in a stroller, you can be underneath that cover. And then also neighborhood dog parks, so not a real large dog park, but that opportunity so the folks in the neighborhood have that just down the street from them, coming from either direction. And then within the large open space, the idea that just some beautiful existing old growth trees through here. We call that kind of a hammock grove area. So you can bring in your hammock, attach those to the trees, and just read a book, take a nap, just enjoy the time in the peaceful park. It's really amazing when you get down in there. You really don't hear traffic. It's really something with that. And then finally, the disc golf course. We've routed 18 holes through here just to show that we have the room for it. Of course, when that goes in, that would be something that is really a detailed layout working hand in hand with those users with that. So then the next areas that I'll turn it over to Hank is we'll talk about the promenade up here, and then we'll come down and talk about the nature play and the water play, and then over to the athletics area along Oliver.
Thank you, PJ. So the first area we'll touch on here is the promenade, and this is really the most intense active use area within the park itself, and we've centralized it within the park to provide plenty of buffer to the surrounding neighbors. And within that area, you'll see on the north side, just closer towards the intersection of Harry and Oliver, what we're calling is Aviation Hill. Think of a very highly sculptural berm that allows for people to come out and watch the planes fly over. It's right along the flight path for the airport, and really has some cool views, but it would also allow for sledding in the wintertime and also for stargazing throughout the evening. As you come in here, we've got our first parking lot with approximately 112 spaces, which would help to serve item number 1, which we're calling a bistro. This is a 2-story structure with it's got an open rooftop that would allow for you to come out, grab something to eat, come and grab something to drink after work before you go out into the park area. And then item number 2 here is a band shell, and this is a dual-sided band shell that opens up for more higher intensity presentations. Think of a small concert or some sort of a theatrical performance that has some seating on the north side, but also opens up to the open plaza space on the south side for some smaller gatherings, maybe a movie night or something along those lines. Item number 3 is a farmer's market, and this is really an all-seasons pavilion that has roll-up doors that can also be heated. Would likely also have some sort of a small kitchen in there for demonstrations. And one thing that we know as we got into this process is that this area is in a food desert for the city of Wichita. And by incorporating this farmer's market helps to serve the need in this area. And then item number 5, we have a overhead shade pavilion with a small fountain space. This just allows for some festival gathering areas. And then item number 7 on the south side here is what we're calling a prairie overlook. This would be a bermed hill that walks through native prairie grasses and spirals to the top. And really, once you get to the top, has a platform that allows you to look out over the entire park and really take in all of the trees and the surrounding nature around you. And then one other item number 8 here, is the 4-bay pollutant removal system. If you've been to the park and you see the creekway that's out there today, trash coming into the park is a huge issue. And so by incorporating this, we're helping to filter out that trash on the first flush of stormwater that's running through here before it actually gets down into the park. We've got a couple of perspectives here. This is looking southwest, so up off of Harry. Looking down towards the promenade, you can see the terrace seating for the amphitheater space and the bistro and farmer's market. Another view closer. And this is a view of the bistro from the parking lot space. You can see here the 2-story space where the upper rooftop gathering patio would be on the promenade side or the courtyard side. And this would be a view of the farmer's market building with the roll-up doors. And then an ultimate view of the promenade space here that would allow for gatherings for festivals and other activities throughout the season.
I think as you read the full master plan report, one of the things we talked about was looking at the day in the life of the park. And what we wanted to do with this is not just have this a one-time visit. You just come to the farmer's market, and that's it. You're done enjoying Clap Park. The idea that on a given Saturday, we'll start with the Friday night. Maybe there's a small concert in the amphitheater, and you can grab, a drink or something to eat at the bistro. And then Saturday morning, you come to the farmer's market, and your kids at the farmer's market can then play in the water features. You're enjoying that, and then coming back that night for a large community event. So the opportunity to do many things and many weekends to appeal to as much as the population as we can. And as Hank said, I can't stress enough the farmer's market. That's something really, really ranked high in our information. That building is really flexible. So think of it as a farmer's market in the morning. Maybe it's then the doors are closed and it serves as a wedding reception Saturday night or a corporate event Friday evening. So there's lots of flexibility, and that's the key to making, the most return for your dollars in this.
One other item that you can see in this perspective is the parking spaces on the south side of the promenade. And this is really space that we can utilize for food truck events to really drive people out here for different activities and gatherings. The next space that we wanted to look at was the active use area. And this space is really more passive recreation, but allows for activities for all ages and abilities. So item number 1 here would be cornhole courts with a park pavilion and restroom that would serve to allow for different cornhole tournaments and other gatherings. And then we also have, as PJ mentioned earlier, more of a nature-based splash pad on the south part here. In item number 3, think of a lot of runnels, natural rocks with sprays in them, places for kids to come and interact with waterfalls and a number of other items. And then off to the left, item number 4, you see this as being a signature playground. This is really a high-use signature playground that would allow for all ages and abilities, but is really more of a destination to really draw people into the park. This and the splash pad would really provide users the opportunity to come and really spend the entire day in the park with their kids. And then there is also a large shelter that has about 65 person capacity associated with that to really support those activities. This we've also identified as a potential opportunity for a year-round use shelter. Here's a look from the Prairie Overlook, looking to the north towards the promenade. And then the shelter, and you can see a common use of materials on all of the shelters and all of the buildings throughout the park, the use of the limestone, and then the bronze posts and the standing seam metal roofs on all of these structures. And then here you can see a splash pad in the background. Again, this is not indicative of what we see in this. This would be more of a nature-based splash pad, but you can see the playground off to the right, and then the year-round use shelter. The final main area that we really wanted to look at was the athletics court area. And as you come in off of Oliver, there's a 70-space parking lot area there with a park pavilion that holds approximately 24. This allows for some rentals, but also has some storage to really support some of the different uses and activities associated with the sports areas. We do have 4 half-court basketball courts associated with this area, and then 6 pickleball courts that would be flanking on the other side. And this really also serves as potentially a location for disc golfers to take a break and grab some water, do whatever they need to do there as well. And the final activity that they've got in this location would be a pump track. This is just a rolling hills for BMX type bike riding. We've got a couple of perspectives here, one looking to the north over the basketball courts onto the pickleball courts, and you can kind of see the pump track in the bottom corner. And again, the pavilion, similar architectural style as the rest of the pavilions within the park facility.
And regarding the budget for what we've shown here, we've broken it down into, this is just our first attempt at 4 phases. So phase 1, as you see here, which is the blue area, so that's coming in, it's the entry drive, it's the promenade and the destination playground and water feature, aviation hill, an amphitheater, and then just a little bit down in through here, and we're anticipating that the park area is a little over $5 million, the playground area, and that's everything, that's just not the playground, it's the parking, et cetera, is $4.5 million, and then the formal area, the buildings, the parking with all that is a total of $6.7. So that kind of that phase 1, which you get a lot of bang for the buck, that's $16.3 million. Phase 2, which is shown in the red, so we get into the additional parking lot to bring in the bistro at that time, because once we have a synergy of uses, that makes that bistro attractive for a vendor to come in and consider that. Then also the athletics area over on the right-hand side here. The bistro is $2.5 million, and then the athletics plaza is $2.7 for a total Phase 2 cost of $5.3 million. Phase 3, which is shown in the yellow, is the dog park and the disc golf, and then everything within that green space area. So connecting the paths, so we've got the opportunity to use some of the existing cart paths and then connect those around the site. That brings a total of $2.8 million. And then a final phase is the what you see in 4 here, which are bringing in some of the additional buildings. It's the park area, it's the playground areas, and it's the formal areas for a total of $3.4 million. So what we're showing here, we're in current dollars, we're saying it's just over a $28 million park. Again, it's a large park. We just completed a park about a year and a half ago for the city of Olathe. The overall master plan cost was approaching $52 million. Phase 1, which they used about 9 years worth of taxing ability on sales tax, was a total of, all in, was a total of $20.1 million. So it's the long term. It's not that this is going to happen, in one fell swoop. It's just the idea of charting out the phases that make sense and how that would go forward. So with that, be happy to answer any questions the council has.
I have a question for Bob. How much have we spent previously to build dog parks in the city?
I can't tell you offhand. Troy, do you have an estimate?
I seem to recall we got most of our dog parks built for $100,000 or $200,000.
That's correct. The last one that we did was roughly $200,000, included the parking lot as well. So depending on the size, whatever you want to look at, the biggest cost is the fencing, then irrigation behind that. So those are the major costs. We have the land already, so that's the great part of it, but you want to connect it to a water source, and you want to connect it to parking as well. And then if you can actually get shade in there, that's a really cool dog park. Yeah.
I guess I'm just questioning why a dog park would cost $1.3 million.
So I think what we're looking at here is all the other items that support it, the parking lot, some of the other items in that general area to support it as well. So I wanted to make a couple comments as well. My good friend Dante reminded me of down in Oklahoma City, Scissortail Park that's right downtown. They're doing that. It's roughly about the same size, and that's $120 million. This is going to be about the same size, and as we're looking at the whole total, yeah, it's a big ticket. But I think what we're looking for as we're developing our parks now, our previous park planners in the past, back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, what they did was they made a nice flat spot. They put grass, maybe they put a tennis court with a parking lot. Hey, that's a park. Now our demands and our expectations of parks are a lot different in regards to gathering spaces, opportunities for programming, and really taking it to the next level. So we were lucky to get Confluence to help us with this. They've done some other situations where they've looked at golf courses and made that transition into parks. And so that's why we had them come help us out with this, is because they have that experience. And they understand what we're looking for in the future as well.
On the costs, I would point, I'll give an example of the city of Olathe. That was a $20 million park for phase 1. But that was a combination of park funds from the sales tax, but then they also, we had a lot of stormwater. They wanted to make sure the water quality for the lake was kept, so we had a lot of stormwater improvements. So the city's stormwater department helped in with some grant money, and then also just some funds from theirs to, armor the channels. We put in some bioswales and other elements to make sure the water quality stays there. It's kind of like, it's not exactly Parks and Rec money, responsibility, but it's pulling from other pots. And also in the roadways, we actually went through, and some of the roadways were, we kept in the same location, about a third of it in the park, we kept them. So the city public works department was able to come in and use money for repair and upkeep on those portions. So it was, it was the city coming together with, 3 or 4 departments with funding potential to bring that together and make it happen, which is something that was I think was amazing to see, and it really bode well for how ultimately the park, turned out.
So I've got a few questions, mostly around experience. I love this presentation, looks great. You brought up some things that piqued my interest. So Aviation Hill, you mentioned the flight path and potentially stargazing. So my question is, on Aviation Hill, will there be any identifying features of the aircraft? Because mostly that's military going over there.
Yeah,
so-
we'd love to. Actually, Aviation Hill, the idea, my in-laws live in the west side, and coming down here over the years, I used to live in Caldwell with our boys. I mean, my wife would always get mad when we're driving I-35 because I'd be like this, watching the planes come in. Just the idea that you could, it's paralleling the flight path, the idea that they're a great opportunity for some interpretive panels down there. Maybe even it's okay if you see, the planes don't change that often, but maybe you see this general outline of a big C, whatever they are, saying that's what this is and this is what it's used for. And then just the rich history of aviation in the city itself is just, I think, a story to be told. So any opportunity we would jump on to have interpretive panels, whether it's the creek and the health of the creek running through, whether it's the original name of Clap Park and what it was used for in the past, coming in with aviation, tree identification is big, Boy Scouts and things. So anywhere we can weave, that's what makes a park really something, when you weave the history and you're teaching kids, but they don't realize they're being taught, which is kind of a fun outcome.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking a little more of like maybe a partnership with McConnell. So some panel
Sure.
that talks about what the K-46 is, another panel that's KC-135, or KC-46, sorry. And I think that would be pretty awesome, because then you see it, you get to identify it and know what it is.
Yeah.
That it's one of the newer planes. Also on that, you mentioned stargazing. So I look at the placement of Aviation Hill next to Harry and Oliver. Are you worried about light pollution and not being able to really see stars?
We felt it was getting far enough away that most of the lights now are coming under downlighting, so we're not seeing a lot of white pollution coming up. So that helps out with that. The whole idea, the Aviation Hill was kind of a culmination of two ideas. We want to build some water bodies, but not on the channel, because if we build on the channel, it just opens up a whole permitting issue with the federal government, which is just time consuming. So the soils we'd be taking out to build those ponds for recreation opportunity, and perhaps a little stormwater management from our new facilities. So that dirt is coming up to build Aviation Hill, and that's when we thought, let's just not make it a berm. Let's do something with it. So, as Hank mentioned, the great place just in the summer to lay back and watch. But then in the winter, should we get snow, that it's a nice hill that the neighborhood kids could have another activity that doesn't cost anything, and they can come over and enjoy that.
I like that. Will you have any telescopes out there? Not the expensive ones. But
Sure could, yeah.
Okay. Just a few more questions, because again, I like experiences. On the Signature Playground, are there any zip line opportunities for kids? Or adults?
I think we would look at that. Obviously, the big issue we have right there is elevation, which we don't have much in the park. But I think we could look at that. Maybe it's you get into, you want to make sure it's handicapped accessible. Yes, a wheelchair-bound person can participate in that. With the idea of making that, it's sure something we could look at. I don't think it's going to be a long zip line like you would see, in national parks or something. But that's certainly something. We've got some smaller zip lines in parks. We just did one at the zoo a few years ago. It's probably 100 feet, maybe 7,500 feet. And it's neat because it's got dual capacity, so it's got the apparatus for a wheelchair-bound kiddo can slide right next to their sibling or their best friend. So they get to enjoy that use together, which is really, when you see the smiles on those, it's pretty darn rewarding.
Yeah. Well, my last question, Troy walked away, but prior to this presentation, Troy had mentioned a couple times of having a hill where you could snow sled on, and bringing in a company that could do some snow even in the spring or summer months. Would you consider that being Aviation Hill, or would you? I would love to see that. I thought that was cool, and I don't see it right now. So if there was a way to build that, that would be awesome.
I think what Troy was insinuating that was this overlook here, which is coming up with soils again from the ponds through here. So the idea of what we had in there is a large berm. Does a couple of things. It kind of gives some buffer to the existing residential units over here, then also uses up some of that soil planted in native grasses. But the idea that you can get up walking through the native grasses, especially the little ones where you've got some, some big blue stem like that, and you come up to the top and you kind of look out over the entire park and over the city, and it's just kind of, you can see downtown from there. Just so that would be an area where I think you could possibly do something like that.
So yes, all those things, but I also want to add, one of the things that was really important about this design is to change elevation throughout the park. A lot of our parks are just, as I mentioned earlier, are just flat. I'll never forget the first summer I was here, and we wanted to do a slip and slide event, and we couldn't find any elevation in Wichita to do that, and we ended up doing it over by the old baseball stadium. It was somewhat successful, but didn't have enough elevation for that. But what's really kind of interesting now is if you go over to the new baseball stadium and you look out in the grass area, you see the kids. What are they doing? They're just rolling down the hill. Man, so much fun, just a hill. And so that's what we talked about on this design, was having some elevation changes. Same thing over at Pawnee Prairie Park. We put in a small little hill in the playscape area, and it's just wonderful. So in a place with no hills, we need to make some hills, and this is kind of what the idea was.
That's all I had. Again, great presentation. Thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you.
I have a question for Troy, if it's okay. And again, great presentation, great job. Can you just remind me of, we had a group of residents who were working on this. I can't remember what their name was, so I apologize for that. But just curious, have they seen this? Have they seen this? Have they had an opportunity to weigh in? Did they have any suggestions or things that they were really excited about, or things that they, not so much? I'm just curious about, we took a lot of time to get a great community input, and just kind of want to hear more about that. Thank you.
So in reverse order, I'm going to try to hit some of the meetings that we went to. Most recently, I made the presentation less than a month ago to the Planning Commission. Used this exact presentation. I think I did almost as good as PJ, but not quite. We also did a presentation to the DAB. We also did a presentation to several of the neighborhood associations in that area. We did a presentation to Councilmember Cirillo. We did a presentation to the Park Board. That's all within this calendar year. Before that, PJ went through a lot of the other meetings that we went through, online meetings, lots of feedback. We got a couple of the user groups, but was really the catalyst for all this was even before we had closed CLAP, and we had a group of stakeholders that were selected throughout the community. Cindy Miles is one that just comes to mind that was on that group. Hoyt Hillman was on that group. There's a couple other ones that I should remember their names, but they're the ones that really are active and tell us a lot about what's going on in the community. And that was even before we closed CLAP, and that kind of gave us the momentum to say, yes, there's potential for this to be a great park. And so it's been almost 2 years worth of interaction with the community.
That group that you mentioned with Hoyt and Cindy, that's the group I'm referring to. Have they seen this presentation?
Yes, they have.
Okay, I just wanted to know, because they invested a great deal of their time into this, so I just want to make sure then they get to see, the final product and see if they have more recommendations.
We actually did a whole workshop with them where we divided them up into 3 different groups, and we gave them a blank slate, and we kind of gave them ideas of things, and they went out and placed it in the park and said, this is where the playground could go. This is the kind of, we want some pickleball courts. This is dog park. And so it was really kind of interesting because there were 3 independent groups. And when we got back, a lot of the ideas matched, which was really interesting. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. Thank you.
For the presentation, it's always fun to see what can be. So just a couple of things. I was looking at the amphitheater portion in particular, and I love amphitheaters. I don't see a lot of shade out there. Kansas in the summer?
We obviously there's shade over the shell itself with that. We do have some shade back in the plaza area there, but that's certainly something that if, when this comes to fruition, that we could look at. Shade structures, they're amazingly expensive for when you look at it, but when you look at what's underground to support them, that's where it's all going. great ads, but maybe there's even an opportunity, because this is Leon Younger with Pros coming out, the opportunity, maybe we put some shade over a certain seating location, and those are, a season ticket holder, and that brings some money in to help offset some of the operating costs, with that. So it's the facility could be totally free, but then if you want to have your reserved spot or some shade, those type of things, that's certainly something I think that could be considered in the next phase. Yeah.
Another part of that is the time of the day that we do the programming. So right now we're at NAFSCA Park. Actually, right now we're doing programming there. There's an activity going on, but it's in the morning. And then maybe some of the concerts or some of the other performances are going to be at night. So definitely I think there would be opportunities to put in some more trees, but it's also the time of day when we do the programming that even if there is shade, it's still kind of warm. So we kind of consider that as well. And speaking of that, this design just has all kinds of opportunities for programming. Councilmember Johnson mentioned, would there be telescopes out there? Well, we probably wouldn't install them, but we would work with somebody who has interest in science, and we want to do a program with the kids, and we would take them out there. We would take the telescopes out there with the kids and do the programming. Here at the stage, we could do a lot of different programming like we're doing over at NAFSCA. So programming is really key in all this.
I also think, I like the idea of the farmer's market. I know that there are a lot of work that market managers, potential,
There, oh, my mic's not working? Okay. I think that, thanks. I think that the market manager potential is one of the things that we have to look at in terms of, just do we have that capacity to be able to run that? But I like the idea of using the venue for other things too.
We started investigating the opportunity of putting a farmer's market there. We have a staff person who's looking at this. We've reached out to a couple folks, and probably the easiest way for us to do it would be to work with some of the current providers of farmers market and give this an opportunity of a location for them to work out of as well. It is a lot of work. I don't think it's something that we want to do in-house with staff, but we can definitely partner with any of the folks that are providing those food opportunities. We can take it to this park as well. We could actually start doing that now is what we're trying to do. We would love to get that established this year to be the foundation for the future.
I just have one more quick question for you, Troy. I love the part of the survey responses. Thank you for providing that data for us, because we really want to make sure we are trying to incorporate what the community members are interested in. And if you mentioned it, I apologize for missing it, but one area that was pretty important to folks was an area for food trucks. Is there an area for food trucks? Okay.
Yeah, that's all built into the infrastructure, similar to what we did over at NAFSCA Park, and the idea that we want to do at least one food truck over at Chester I. Lewis. The idea is to put in power for them so they don't have to use generators, and it just kind of reduces the noise pollution and just really makes it flexible for them to come in and out. So this would be a great place to have food truck rallies or special events that are supported by food trucks.
And just on a side note, I learned at my DAB this month, that the library now has rentals for telescopes. So Park and Rec could work with the library and plan some pretty cool things. So thank you.
And this is my district, so I'm very proud of these plans, so thank you so much for your hard work in doing this. One of the most important things that I am always hearing, and I just wanted you to reiterate these concerns, I hear a lot of people very concerned about flooding along that creek. How has the flooding issue been dealt with? And we're not worried about any flooding concerns in the park with the creek that runs all the way through it.
Yeah, if you can kind of see these red lines, those are the flood boundaries. So everything that is capital intensive, a parking lot, a playground, a shelter, the sports courts are all outside of that. So it's just something we did. It's just good practice with that. We talked about the idea of we've got such a massive watershed coming into the park. Just look at I think it's 3 boxes or 4 under that. They come in, takes all the pollutants from how many acres coming down, and puts here. In talking with our engineers, there's not we can do some to help. We might be able to help with the ponds and things, especially the community just to the bottom right, bottom left of this with that, but in reality, we're not going to be able to do enough on the site to really impact that in a large manner. But we've done the due diligence to keep those elements that you don't want in the floodway out.
Further questions? See none, Mr. Manager.
Thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you all.
Your next opportunity to visit about this will be when we present, or actually discuss the CIP. You've got 3 more workshops or public forums on the budget and CIP, so you get a chance to talk about the project. The next item has to do with revisions to our enforcement and administration of Kansas Open Records Act, and I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Magana to kick this off.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Open Records Act. Just a little bit about the Kansas Open Records Act, which we can affectionately called KORA. The state law, it applies to all public agencies in Kansas, and it defines public record as any recorded information, regardless of form, characteristics, or location, which is made, maintained, or kept by, or is in the possession of any public agency or any officer or employee of a public agency pursuant to the officer or employee's official duties, and which is related to the functions, activities, programs, or operations of any public agency. So that deals with a lot of records, and for the city of Wichita, that means in terms of requests, we receive routinely over 3,000 requests a year. I checked this morning, and as of today, we are at 1,980 requests to date for the year, so a little over 280 requests a month. So it's a significant function of the city on a daily basis, and it's important that we talk about it and make sure we're handling it okay. To clarify, the state law is KORA. A lot of requesters talk about FOIA. That's the federal law, Freedom of Information Act. Similar, but it's at the federal level. So a couple items we want to just let you know that about today that are coming up. We will be presenting in a future meeting ordinances to fully codify all the city's practices and procedures consistent with the state law. The other piece is going to be presented by Deputy City Clerk Jeannie Buster, and that's exciting. It's going to be new software that will implement and automate the KORA process, and I think it will be extremely beneficial for all citizens, all requesters, all interested parties, and also helpful for city staff just to automate the process and be more, I think, just user-friendly. So that's exciting. Under KORA, just a little background, public agencies are required to formally adopt procedures to be followed in requesting access to and obtaining copies of public records. Public agencies are specifically required to provide full access to public records, to protect public records from damage and disorganization, to prevent excessive disruption of the agency's essential functions, to provide assistance and information upon request, and to ensure efficient and timely action in response to applications for inspection of public records. So we have worked with staff and had a lot of input on trying to develop the best, most comprehensive ordinances that address currently all that we do and mirror state law and make it clear exactly what we do, what are the procedures to make requests, and how they are handled. And so that's what these ordinances that you have before you would do. Specifically, one section of the ordinance would appoint the city clerk as the city's local Freedom of Information officer. It would specifically name the department directors as the official custodians for the records in their departments that are not maintained by the city clerk. And the ordinance would really specify the duties, and there are many duties of all the custodians of records for all the city's records. In terms of public access, Section 2.66 addresses the procedures for that. And these are, again, mirrored by state law and would address what we think are all significant processes and provisions that we handle on a daily basis. I'd point out that some records are not subject to mandatory disclosure. Some records are open but must be redacted in portions to remove things like social security numbers or dates of birth. And some records are closed by law, such as juvenile records or records with criminal history, non-conviction information, or records that are closed by state or federal law. So there is a process to review each one of those in terms of public access. It's not always just here are the records. It takes some review on the part of staff. So this ordinance would just codify the procedures for that. Another section of the ordinance would address how the types of records that are under the categories of audio, video, and photographic records are responded to. The ordinance specifically recognizes that such records may be stored as now computer data. The statute really hasn't addressed that, but we would treat these as computer data, and it's not exempt from disclosure just because it is a photo if it's stored digitally. This language is consistent with the state law on how access is requested and responded to with reference to law enforcement's body-worn camera videos as well. The second ordinance that would be before you in a future meeting is on the fee schedule. And again, this mirrors the state law in terms of what's required. It sets up uniform citywide fees and procedures. It would require requester to receive an advance estimate of costs before anything is settled or charged. There's no minimum fees required, but there are estimates provided before somebody gets records. For inspection of records, because some people just want to inspect records and not make copies, there is no charge for the first 30 minutes of staff time that is required. And one exciting thing is this process would allow for the automated billing and payment with credit cards with this new software that I think will be helpful for everyone. So with that, that's a quick overview of just the ordinances. Deputy City Clerk Jamie Buster is here to talk to you about the exciting part of this, which is the software that I think will be very user-friendly and beneficial. Thank you.
Good morning, Deputy City Clerk Jamie Buster. So currently, residents are able to request records by online, email. They can come in, fill out a form. There's a fillable form online. They can just come in, write on any piece of paper what records are requesting. That's not changing because that's state statute, so it won't be changing at all. One added benefit is that the new Cora software will provide an online library of requests that have been made. So that'll eliminate duplications, extra staff time warranted for that. So all a person can do when they're making the request online is they can check that library, see if that request has already been made. All the information's right there for them already. So they don't have to make it again, pay again, all that. Internally, staff are going to be fully trained and better equipped for the Cora process. We will be doing mandatory training for all Cora custodians. The new system will be a one-stop shop for handling requests. The requests can come in, they can invoice from it, they can redact from it, they can take payment from it, and they can email the documents right out from the system. And let's see. I'll show you guys our current process right now. This is just a copy, it's a sample of our current Cora spreadsheet. I built this sheet in 2017 and we are vastly outgrowing it. Currently, a request comes in through the system, it autofills through here, and it's my duty to go through, assign the department, assign the Cora custodians, and send it out to them to be filled. Then it's the Cora custodians' duty to either note if they're delaying it, note if they sent an invoice, if they received a payment, if they've closed it. So it's very simple. It does have a built-in feature where it does request the custodians every night at midnight if there's an item that's still in red here, which means it has not been addressed yet. If the item is white, that means it's been met, the 3-day limit's been conducted and all that. So that's our current procedures. Right now, if you look at our city clerk's website, to request the records, you go to a guide for open records. This is how you do it online. And just click how to request records. And on step 2 here is the online form. And that form they can fill out, and it takes them directly to that smart sheet. It inputs it from there. With the new system, it'll change just a little bit, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Also on the clerk's website, we have a list of, there it is, our fee schedule, a list of record custodians, and everything else. With the new system, this is what it'll look like when you click on the link from the clerk's website. Here, the search button takes you to that online library where you can see all these different requests being made. These are just several test requests that we've done. And you have the option to make it public or staff only. Staff only would be for internal documents, going back and forth, notes, comments, attorney-client privilege information. Anything else you can put out to the public, or you can just do it between the requester and staff if you have external messages, the invoices, etc. Through here, when a requester is going to make a request, this form comes up. On the side here, it gives a disclaimer about the CORA process as well as fees. These are the basic fees that are most popular. Then we'll have this hyperlinked once the fee ordinance is passed, that they can click it and see the full ordinance and all the fees associated with it. There's also prohibited use of public records, as well as the name and address certification form, which we require to fill out so people do not sell information of names and addresses. One nice feature is a lot of times we get requests for stuff that's not ours, such as divorce records, birth certificates, 911 calls. Say a person wants a birth certificate, if they type in birth, this little yellow notification box pops up, and it kind of tells them, hey, we don't do that, but here's where you can go to get that done. So that'll also save a lot of staff time in replying to those. The requester also has the option to choose their department. So then we don't have to have a CORA person going in, looking at every request every 5 minutes to make sure it's gone somewhere and it's not just sitting there. They have this option right here to choose what department they want it to go to, and they can also choose multiple departments from this. So if they have something for property management, city clerk's office, etc., they can choose all that from there, and that request will go out there. One city that's using this that's nearby is KCK, Wyandotte County. I have spent several hours on the phone with their clerk. She is like a huge cheerleader for this operation. So I've talked to her several times, both pros and cons of the system, and tried to come out with different ways we can work it out to benefit us on our end. And they also use the online library as well. So those are our new systems. Are there any questions on it? Yes.
Jamie, you mentioned Wyandotte County, KCK.
Mm-hmm.
Any other Kansas communities using this, and how long have they been using this?
They've been using it since 2018.
Okay.
Most others are on the West Coast that are using it, most other cities. This is the only one in Kansas.
Jamie?
Yes.
Thank you. Great job. Just a logistical question, because I'm trying to figure it out in my head. So the main advantage is that it'll make it easier for the community to request records,
Mm-hmm.
and then less staff time in the request process. The staff would still have to do the work of fulfilling the request, finding the documents, the emails, whatever.
Right.
Right?
Yes, staff will still have to do their due diligence within the 3 days state statutory limit to find the requests. Nothing externally is changing really for the community as far as requesting. This is just giving an added benefit to it with that online library to add more transparency to it where they can see previous requests made. And if it's something that they're already looking for, they don't have to make another request.
And just to make sure I'm accurate, so if it's 30 minutes or less of staff time, then there is no cost to the community. So it could also be saving citizens, residents, funds.
Yeah, for inspection.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for walking me through that.
So I have a question. Was stakeholders engaged in this process, such as the media, folks who often request open records? Were they engaged in? If so, what was their reaction to a product like this?
We didn't reach out to the media for it. We had a selection committee. We sent out RFPs, and we received 5 of them back. And from that selection committee, we demoed all of those products, and we chose next request.
And I understand that's how we pick out the software. But out of these 3,000 requests per year, I mean, I'm just guessing that the majority of those are media requests, people looking for is there another way that folks?
It's really not media requests. I mean, the majority of it, I would say media requests is 10% maybe.
Really? Then what would you guys say is the top?
Police records.
Oh, police records.
Yeah, just residents wanting police records. That would be the majority of it.
And I only say media because they're pretty much tasked with transparency in our system. So, and we've seen lots of investigative reporting that comes from these requests. So, and I want to make sure that we are, we're in the business of customer service, and that includes those who hold us accountable. But we don't know what they would think about this new system, or if there would be any unintended consequences in using it.
No, we didn't reach out to the media.
Okay. And also, you mentioned this new fee structure. I'm looking at it where, for example, the $9.50 an hour or $9.50 for 15 minutes for information technology, it's about $40 an hour to fulfill 1 hour of a request. Since Wyandotte County is probably the most like us in Kansas who are utilizing this system, could you tell me what their fee structure is? Or
Yeah, I can show you their fees. Here's their fees.
Are we comparable to it?
We're under theirs.
Okay, so we'd be, all right. And is the current fee structure that we charge, is that something in ordinance, or would we be creating a whole new ordinance to put the fees in ordinance? Just how is it currently, the fee structure currently?
What we're trying to do is to equalize the fees across the organization, and so that we're charging one rate for every request, and that we're also providing that initial 30 minutes free to residents. Right now, the departments have calculated their rate. I think there's some inconsistency in the way they've calculated their rates, and that's why we wanted to implement this so we have a uniform approach. And again, we did not want to make it onerous, and that's why I think you see that our fees are more favorable than in a comparable city.
Okay. Further discussion?
Are you
Yes,
finished?
of course.
Okay. All right. Is my mic working now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No.
No,
No, it
you
quit.
moved it, it quit.
No.
That's usually the mic they give me.
So we didn't reach out to the media, but have we had any potential users review this? Or was the selection committee, it was all internal?
It was all internal, the selection committee was.
Okay. One just kind of technical question, and maybe you covered this. Can a user see the status of their request?
Yes.
Okay.
So, these, of course, are all ones that have been completed. But from the user-facing standpoint of it, they'll be able to see if it's in progress or not. This system also allows them to create their own account so that they can make requests easier instead of having to fill out all their information every single time. They can just log into their account, make requests, and they can see the progress of where it's at, what departments have touched it, and when it's ready.
And we don't have that capability now.
Not right now because we are not live. So, yeah. Yes.
But earlier in your presentation, just to clarify, you said nothing is changing as to the way we currently allow people to request records. We're still going to have online, by mail, by email, in person. All of that will still continue to exist, whether it's for the normal resident or the media.
Correct.
This is just an added step to make it easier, quicker, and allow for more transparency.
Correct. This is not the only way to request a record. They can request a record. State statute says anything in writing is a record request. So this is not the only way. This is just a better tracking system for internally and also externally to show you that online library.
Did Wyandotte County have more community engagement when they released theirs, or did they just switch the system?
No, theirs was all internal too. They did the same process. They went through RFPs, selection committee, and this is what they chose.
Well, I think this sounds pretty awesome, honestly, and that library I think will be pretty cool. Well, probably shouldn't say cool, but being able to see all the requests and stuff, that'll probably eliminate a lot of additional time for you
Yes.
all, because we hear about the same types of core requests all the time. So having that library, I think, is a real benefit.
And it also does have a built-in redaction feature where we can directly apply whatever state statute is correlating with that redaction. And at the end of their documents we produce, it produces a report that gives you the full statute for that redaction.
Wow. Will there be assuming this may get approved, would there be like an instructional video that we put out that could teach people?
Yes. The company actually has an instructional video too that they put, I think, in their FAQs for the public. And then we also will teach it internally for all of our users.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
So just to follow up, and I might feel more comfortable with a system change without engaging the folks who use this, the old way of requesting would still, if Councilmember Fry's line of questioning is correct, the old way of requesting a record is still there as people learn to adjust to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the old way, it's never going to go away. I mean, it's required. It's never going to go away. This is just another avenue that they can request, because currently on the city clerk's page, you can request online, but it just takes you to that smart sheet that we've outgrown. This you can request online, and it'll just take you to the new software.
Okay, so it's just an added tool. And as far as the fee structure that we put in place, when compared to similar cities, can we confidently say that we are less than what some of those other cities are?
We have, we've built our fee schedule off of the suggestions by the Attorney General as well as area cities. We've looked at their fee schedules, Topeka's, and based ours off of that.
Further questions on this? Mr. Manager?
Thank you. We'll be bringing the ordinance changes to you for formal consideration. Okay. Last item has to do with a report to you and to the community based on, it's really an update to the response to the community that was provided in June of last year regarding police issues and social justice concerns. We want to give you an idea of what's transpired in the last 12 months. I'm going to start off by asking Deputy Chief Chet Pinkston to give you an update on the police activities, and then we'll move from there into municipal court.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Again, I am Deputy Chief Chet Pinkston for Field Services, filling in for the chief today. I thank you, Mayor and council members, for allowing me to be here. As we go through the presentation, sometimes I do have a tendency to talk pretty fast, so I apologize for that. If I get to going too fast, or if you have a question, just let me know. Our policy updates, we constantly strive to keep up with national best practices. We review policies anywhere between 2 and 4 policies a week, each and every week. Sometimes if we miss a week, we'll be 6 to 8 policies behind, but this is a continuous ongoing process that we do to ensure that we're staying in compliance. Some of our policies are a little bit more critical than others that require the annual review, but we do this as an ongoing practice for the police department to stay with national best practices as far as what we do, how we do it, and what we say in our policies for the community to understand. If you look at our increased community policing efforts, one of the things that we did last year was we removed 3 positions from traffic. We'll talk about traffic here in a little bit, but we removed 3 positions from traffic. We put 3 community police officers in the down court area. We have since reduced that back down to 1. But we have this core area officer that primarily does foot and bike patrol in this area. Their objective is for community engagement to ensure that we're talking to the businesses, that we get a lot of concerns and issues from the businesses in regards to some of the core downtown area challenges that we have. And we try to ensure that those officers are making that engagement. And I think this has been pretty beneficial. I hope that some of you have received some feedback in regards to some of the core area issues and the officer that we have down there now. If you look at Patrol North has also instituted a consistent ongoing bike patrol effort. I don't know if you get all of the updates that come to us. I think the chief tries to keep you apprised of those, but you'll frequently see pictures where the officers will stop and engage with children that are playing basketball. They'll stop by the schools. I think they had a kickball contest. I think the officers lost. I kind of hope that they threw that and not really lost, but the kids did win that game, and I really hope that you're getting to see those. There was a foot race. I think there was some video in regards to the foot race. I hope all of you saw the foot race. I do believe the officer won. Luckily, it wasn't me there because the kids would have won that one too, and I wouldn't have had to throw it for them to win. So we're doing a good job, I think, in that regard with that engagement. That also is, I think, community-driven. You know, we're trying to engage those communities that reach out to us. We're trying to ensure that we're doing the outreach in some of the areas where maybe we haven't had such a strong presence or a positive presence before, and we believe that some of this is going to pay dividends for us. And like I said, I'm really hoping that you're getting feedback in regards to not only the core area, but some of these other things that we're doing. Over the past 5 years, you know, we've sought to increase our dialogue, again, address our policies and procedures, and Chief Ramsey is very strong on this. Some of the things that I want you to hopefully see and understand is if you look at the last 5 years, you're going to see a continuous evolution of the police department. I kind of actually look at it from when my career started to where we are today. It's like if you look at a book, you can see just this natural evolution, and these 5 years have really gone by warp speed, and I think a large part of that is Chief Ramsey's expectations and what he's been implementing when he got here. But we do have a duty to intervene. I believe all of our members have gone through that training at least once. Most of them have gone through it at least twice. We have de-escalation built into the policy now. It is now a requirement. It's also taught. We have embedded caseworkers with us, community caseworkers. We have the ICT-1, which is a mental health crisis component where we respond to people who are in immediate crisis. If you look at some of the CIT training that we've provided to all the officers as well, I think we're having a better understanding. We also had a training this past mandatory in-service training session where we put together training for officers to recognize, understand, and how to respond to what we call people who are having a excited delirium type of situation where it's not truly mental health, but it could be chemically induced. And that typically requires us to partner with EMS. So we partnered with EMS. We came up with some training, taught it together to all the officers. I believe EMS is teaching it to all of their personnel as well. And I've seen probably 10 or 15 emails in the last couple of months just from that, and the officers recognizing it at least 2 times in the last month. I've seen commendatory emails or letters that have come from professional partners saying, hey, your officers did great. They recognize this for the excited delirium that it was. We want to say kudos, great job and way to go. And again, these are all reforms that have come through, our responses to the feedback that we get from the community and the concerns that are brought to us. Any questions about any of those items that I mentioned?
Just for the public, could you explain what duty to intervene means?
Yeah, absolutely. If an officer sees something that they clearly know is not within policy or doesn't believe it's within policy, if they see an officer that's clearly doing something that could be a crime, they are required to intervene. They cannot sit by and say, well, yeah, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't do anything about it. They have an obligation, an affirmative obligation to do something about it.
Thank you.
In regards to traffic citations, this is always something that's an area of concern for the communities. We had our crime linkage unit start pulling these statistics. We're going through a records management system change, so we're just having a few challenges on the ability to pull this information, cull it properly, and present it to people. We've pulled the information for 2019 and 2020. We've partnered with Dr. Berger from WSU to go through the information, validate it for us, and provide us with response. When that's done, this will be presented to the community and the Citizens Review Board for their consumption. Just to give everyone an update on traffic, the purpose and goal for traffic, proactively address traffic violations, try to reduce traffic accidents, curb aggressive driving, and hopefully decrease fatal and serious injury accidents. Unfortunately, we've seen a significant decrease in the number of accidents that we've had, but last year, and we're on pace again this year, to see higher numbers of fatalities than we'd like to see. And we also have an education component to that. Chief Ramsey's been very aggressive with his expectations that officers use discretion to avoid some of the more minor offenses and writing citizens. We prefer the engaging them, educating them, and trying to correct the behavior that, sometimes I don't think citizens realize that even if nobody's around, they can't just do a slow roll through a stop sign. They think that's okay. We call that the California roll. That's not okay. And we want them to know that. So, if officers have an opportunity to use that discretion, they do, and you're going to see where that discretion is used here when we get to the volume of citations that have been issued. In 2020, the traffic officers, we have 15 traffic officers. They average about 170 citizen contacts each month. And again, their contacts, they're very focused. That's what they do. They don't typically respond to 911 calls. They respond to traffic complaints, high accident locations, and then other requests that we make of them. And what they will typically do is either write a citation or issue a warning when they have a contact with that citizen. Each month they get a listing for those high accident locations. You're going to see some on their statistics sheet here in just a minute that covers that. Costs associated with our traffic unit include we have a captain there, we have a lieutenant, 3 sergeants, and 15 officers. It was 18 until we pared that down to 15 last year. The salary and benefits associated is approximately $2.8 million for that unit. If you look at our accidents, you'll notice that in 2018, when our traffic unit actually came online, you will see a little bit of a dip in 2017. But that really wasn't due to full-time traffic enforcement section, just happened to be a byproduct. But you'd seen a continuous rise from 2014 through 16. Stabilized in 17 and 18 and 19, but in 2020, when we had the full effect, we had everyone trained. We have 2 grants for motorcycles. You saw more aggressive enforcement where we're trying to target the areas that we have the accidents. And that's what the traffic unit has brought to us, is the ability to target these areas. And I think that's why you're seeing a decrease in the number of accidents. Unfortunately, we still have significant speeders. We did a traffic enforcement, I believe it was last week, and our high speed on Kellogg was 94 miles an hour. And that is not uncommon. And frankly, it's very common for us to have those type of egregious speeds on Kellogg. If you take Kellogg, you probably have seen it.
Was that just driving or was that like racing?
Typically just driving.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I ask a quick question?
Of course.
I'm just curious. I love to see the downward trend,
Yes.
right? In 2020, like in almost everything, COVID affected us.
It did.
I'm just curious, were less people just driving in 2020 because they weren't going anywhere, especially during the shutdown? I'm not at all trying to, steal your thunder, but I was just
Right.
curious if that's being taken into account.
We do believe that was factored into because you can see that's a significant reduction.
Yeah,
That's not a
right.
slight reduction.
So it'll be curious to see what 2021 does, right?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Correct.
To that end, do you have a pace for 2021, where we're at right now?
I apologize, I didn't actually ask for where we're at in 2021. I just asked for the 2020 to show you the year-by-year comparison. What I'll do, council members, I will try to get that information and email all of you with it.
That's awesome.
If you look at our next slide, this is our fatal accidents, and you can see that 2020, even though we did have, we believe, decreased traffic, decreased accidents clearly, we still had an increase in fatalities. And we do believe that, maybe some of the societal factors that influence people's behavior in 2020 are also impacting this, because we do see an increase in aggressive driving, the egregious speeds on Kellogg. There have probably been times I've been responding as fast as I could to get to a call where a citizen needed me to have my lights and sirens on, that I wasn't doing 95 miles an hour on Kellogg. So when citizens are just doing it in routine traffic, it's very concerning. But we have seen an increase. I wished I could give you a specific answer as to why, but we just believe that maybe some of the societal issues have really impacted people, their thought processes, and how they're driving. If you look at the citations by the entire patrol division versus just the traffic section, the traffic officers are writing substantially more citations than the patrol officers. And if Councilwoman Tuttle, if you'll look at 2019, you'll see that traffic had written 16,000 tickets in 2019, and they wrote 23 in 2020. So even though we know we had a decrease in the motoring public at that time, we still saw an increase in traffic officers and their enforcement. Because again, traffic officers respond to neighbor-oriented traffic enforcement complaints that are frequently provided to you, that you turn over to us. They come from community police officers who get input, and then they focus on basically the top 15 to 20 high accident locations as well. So they're very aggressive at trying to address some of that, where we have accidents and the complaints that come in. If you look at the impaired driving, you will see that the traffic officers, for such a small unit, do have a significant impact on arresting impaired drivers. Patrol officers, had a little bit of a high in 2018 that dropped down in 2019 and 2020, and we're again expecting those trends to kind of mirror 2021. I just didn't ask for an update in regards to it at this time. Their responsibilities for the traffic unit include the deployment of the speed trailer. Some of you have probably asked for that we provide some of what we'll call the stealth stat information, provide feedback to you, the number of cars, volume of cars, time of day, high speeds, when you can see the highest speeds, those type of things. They do respond to neighborhood complaints. They compile the traffic data for enforcement locations. They do DUI check lanes. Of course, they do self-initiated traffic enforcement. They assist with traffic fatality investigations. There are experts in drug recognition and DUI investigations. They assist with traffic control at accident scenes, allowing patrol officers more time for calls. As you know, we have a significant 911-driven expectation from the community, so the traffic officers are helping free up officers to still take those 911 calls. Traffic enforcement stops result in the arrest of wanted individuals, narcotic arrests, etc., and then educating citizens on traffic laws. And our primary goal is accident reduction. If we look here on the statistics for 2020, if you look about midway down, you'll see Kellogg and Seneca. And if you start looking down below that, those are your high, I think there's 9 or 10 of them here. Those should mirror our high accident locations of the top 10 to 15 that we have here in Wichita. The number one location is Kellogg and Washington. Kellogg and Seneca. Third is 21st and Mays, and then the next two are also for 4 and 5 are Kellogg. And then I don't think we have another Kellogg until the top 10, but 5 of the top 10 locations are in fact on Kellogg. That's why we spend a lot of time up there. Any questions on the statistics? Well, here's where we're getting into some of this innovation that we're doing. As you know, police departments in major metropolitan areas are 24-hour day operation, and I think society has really come to rely on the police department in regards to handling everything that comes up. To that end, police officers are not great at some of these functions. You've noticed, we mentioned earlier that we have a partnership. We're trying to increase those partnerships where we're partnering with mental health providers. We're partnering with social workers. We have, we want to work on housing stabilization. I know we work with the housing department in regards to some of those efforts. They're in the process of hiring 3, I believe it is, 3 additional, thank you, Sally. They're hiring 3 additional social work interns for the fall semester. We had a master's level social worker that was embedded with our community support specialists, and this intern initially thought that all police officers did all day long was chase people around and write tickets, and I believe that they had a renewed appreciation for what law enforcement actually does, and this person has actually applied for the police department. So we're pretty happy with that. By the way, if you know anybody's looking for a job, send them our way. The city manager's office, Zach Gramka, had put together an initiative at the city manager's urging in regards to a possible program for community outreach in regards to what the ICT-1 program doesn't do. The ICT-1 program, again, is for the immediate crisis. This, for lack of a better way of explaining it, would be ICT-2. They're there for the follow-up and the follow-through to ensure that we're engaging these people, trying to get them services before they get back to a crisis. We're going to be more successful working with them on the back end than trying to work with them and get them resources in when they're in the immediate throes of a crisis. Does that make sense to everybody? So this is basically done. I believe we've partnered with ComCare, and they're going to have an opportunity, I think, here in the very near future. It's been approved for their budget to hire this person that's going to work with our personnel. So we're very excited about that. Great work by Zach on that to help. He did a lot of facilitating and spent a lot of time on it, so we were appreciative of it. Again, we prioritize community involvement in the selection process for community police officers, for assignments to specialty units, for promotions to detective, sergeant, and lieutenant that are all covered in our policy 221. This policy requires us to include community members at large, people from outside the department, and also for racial and gender diversity. That's all included in the policy, and we do strive for that. Just so everyone knows, animal control recently got approval. I know you all have a challenge when it comes to budget these times, and everyone's asking for services and personnel, and we do appreciate the fact that you and the manager were able to work your way through this, and so we're in the process of getting these positions hired, and they've done a great job out there, running with less staff than they would have preferred. But we do appreciate that. This has been done, and I believe they've already had their interviews, and these personnel should be coming on board very soon. Just so everyone knows also, cultural awareness community panels, when we put officers through the Recruit Academy, they have 4 different panels that they are exposed to, and this includes representatives from the African American, the Hispanic, the Muslim, and the Asian communities. And these panel members, when they come in, they simply explain the view and the impact of police in those communities, and what officers, how they're perceived, and what they need to do to, hopefully improve service delivery to those communities. And we're very happy with this. I know, even though I had gone through the academy many years ago, we had some of these exposures to us, because I know a lot of people think a lot of this is new. It's really not. It's improved, it's better, it's reinforced now. We're policing a lot of this stuff now, which makes it a requirement. But we have been trying to do this as a profession for a long time. We're just not quite where we need to be.
Deputy Chief, can I just ask a quick question?
Of course.
Thank you. I was not aware of this, and I think that's fantastic. So thank you for bringing it to my awareness, and hopefully others. I'm just curious, how are the folks selected from the African American, Hispanic, Muslim, and Asian communities? And then I just wonder if that's something too that could be a potential opportunity for engagement with the Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights Advisory Committee. I don't know that, but even just to bring it to their awareness and see if there's any input that they have. But mostly I'm just curious how the folks are selected. Thank you.
That's a great question. Basically, you look at, there are already organized communities, already organized community leaders within there. We have contact with them. For instance, the Muslim leaders, they have a very significant role in playing and keeping us informed on what's going on with their synagogues, because like it or not, they do have suspicious activity that happens around their locations. They try to make us aware of them, those type of things. So when we have these partnerships and these ongoing relationships built up with people in the community, that's typically who we will rely on for that. I know that in the past, council members have provided recommendations for people that have expressed interest, and I believe that we've tried to incorporate those as well. But it's just typically the already established infrastructure for that community and who those leaders are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I've got something for municipal court. Does anyone have any questions for me on?
So I don't have any questions. I do appreciate you highlighting all of this. And I think the community panels piece has been great. So I participated in one of those.
Great, thank you.
And it was awesome to talk to all the new recruits before they got out on the streets.
Right.
And we had, I think we had 13 people in that panel. But we all just talked about our experiences, and what I appreciate was that there was an opportunity to be real with everyone about past experience and expectations, and even what the young officers could expect once they got out on the streets. And I think that's been a real benefit to the department and those officers.
Great, that's good to hear.
I actually do have a question. So on the Wichita State, I was on a call, this was last year after we kind of started talking about this. Do they have a curriculum done for those social work students? I saw that there's one practicum student. Do they have a curriculum for more people to participate?
Yes.
Okay.
And so does Newman University.
I was about to say
Wichita
that.
State.
I talked to a group of students at Newman a few months ago, and they were interested too, so I'm glad you're talking to them.
We had 2 interns, I want to say it was the spring semester of last year.
Okay.
We had 2 of them on board, which was kind of challenging with COVID, and we pretty much did a lockdown with in regards to ride-alongs and citizen contacts, but we made it work. And again, those were Newman University. There were 2 of them that time, and so now it's expanded. It's WSU and Newman, and it's a great partnership, I do believe.
Awesome. So just from the police perspective, do you feel like that's a benefit, having
Yes.
those relationships?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure do. I know many officers you'll hear frequently that I don't have the skill set, I don't know how to handle these things, I don't have the ability. So when someone walks in, a simple social worker walks in, my mother was a social worker, so I'm kind of near and dear to them maybe. When they walk in as a social worker and say, I can solve this problem, I can help with this, I know about these resources, it takes that responsibility off the officer. We already hold the officer highly accountable, they're responsible for outcomes, they're responsible for, the expectations that we have for them. So when that person walks in with that little bit of help for them, I think it's well received, very
Awesome.
much so.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else have questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Hi, good morning, Mayor, City Council. My name is Courtney Carpenter. I'm the Chief Probation Officer for Municipal Court. This morning I'm going to talk about some of Municipal Court's initiatives and the way we successfully navigate people through the court system without penalizing poverty. The first program I'm going to talk about will be the effects of those cases that are unadjudicated cases and primarily concerned with bonding issues. After that, the remaining initiatives will involve defendants after the cases have been adjudicated and concerns with driver's license suspensions, payment compliance, substance abuse treatment, and some custody. The first one I'm going to talk about is our own recognizance bond, or an OR bond. The municipal court makes extensive use of our OR bonds, which is a release from jail and the defendant's personal assurance that they will appear in court. OR bonds do not require the defendant to pay a bondsman or secure their freedom through paying the court. The vast majority of arrestees are released from jail without posting a bond, provided that they are not a threat to themselves, the community, and haven't missed court consecutively. Since 2018, there has been a 15% increase in OR bonds authorized. About 4,361 were in 2020. I'm also going to talk a little bit about our city-paid alcohol electronic monitoring system. We call it SCRAM, is the municipal court calls it. It's for financially challenged defendants that violate the alcohol conditions of the release of probation or on probation. This program allows those who would otherwise could not afford electronic monitoring to avoid spending time in jail, and provides the defendant to meet their probation or release conditions successfully. Basically what it is it's a bracelet, and it goes on their ankle, and it monitors if there's any alcohol in their system every so many seconds. So it's accurate. We've seen defendants try to use something to put in between it to see if it'll stop it from reading, and it says it's tampered. So it's really accurate on the alcohol monitoring part. Annually, the city has paid approximately $15,000 to provide electronic monitoring to those that financially cannot afford to ordinarily do that, or their other option would be to go into jail. So this is a great opportunity for them. I'm going to talk about a few alternative sentencings that we have. We use the DRC program, or Day Reporting Center. It's for high-risk defendants with substance abuse issues at a no-cost option to keep them out of jail while providing rehabilitative services needed for recovery. In addition to meeting the treatment needs, the defendants, DRC provides batterer intervention services as well at no cost to those that have substance abuse challenges that are convicted of certain domestic violence offenses. Since 2018, over 250 people have been served at the Day Reporting Center. It's very intense. It's a 5-day program. They start out 5 days, and then they eventually graduate down to less days into that facility. They get their treatment, they get their UAs, they get everything. It's wraparound services right in there. And we keep trying to add more and more to the Day Reporting Center as we can. We also have 2 therapeutic courts. We have the drug court and the mental health court. The drug court was created in 1995. It's one of the first 100 drug courts in the nation. We were the first in Kansas. The drug court began as a deferred judgment program, and then went on to being a probation program as well. It's a non-traditional approach to treating defendants who are substance abusers. Drug court has a less than 1% recidivism for drug-related charges for those that complete the drug court. So it's a fairly successful program. We also have mental health courts. It's a specialized docket to address the unique needs of mentally ill offenders charged with criminal or traffic offenses. Police department talked about coming in contact with those that are mentally have mental issues or anything. We also partner with ComCare on both of our therapeutic courts, drug court and mental health court, to meet the needs of these folks. They get them to treatment. They get them a case manager. They get them if they apply for services that they don't maybe know that they have or could qualify for housing. They do whatever they can to get them the services that they need. On average, we have about a 5% recidivism rate for those that complete the mental health court program. I'm going to talk a little bit about I'm sorry, I went too fast. The WIP program, the Wichita Intervention Program. This is another therapeutic alternative to traditional incarceration. Kansas law requires defendants who have on a first-time DUI can serve 48 hours in custody. Wichita Municipal Court provides that in a hotel setting. So they get their 48 hours, so they get a nice room and they get fairly good food in a hotel, but they also get all the education, anything that they might need. They have attorneys that come in, panels, and we have a instructor that comes all weekend. On average, the city has referred about 500 people annually with a recidivism rate of less than 1%. Also, the city prosecutor's office offers 9 diversion programs for many municipal court offenses, such as domestic violence, DUI, petty theft, driving unsuspended, etc. By engaging in the diversion program, the defendants can keep criminal charges off their records. The program requires the defendants to pay costs, fines, and fees to make full restitution to victims and follow the individual conditions of the program to receive as long as they receive no new criminal charges. All right. Now on to, I'm going to talk just a little bit about our payment options that we have. Municipal Court has, it's Wichita Municipal Court Code 1.04.070. The recent changes to this code would allow defendants with suspended driver's license who have manifest hardships to petition the court to waive the reinstatement fee, fines, and court costs. If the judge finds a manifest hardship, they can waive and reduce the reinstatement fee, fines, and court costs. A defendant may be eligible to get their driver's license back as soon as the reinstatement fee is waived or satisfied. The municipal court also does payment plans. This is a big deal on the municipal court side. A lot of people engage in the payment plan. It's a no-interest payment plan. It allows defendants to extend their compliance period. Defendants avoid negative consequences of falling into non-compliance like driver's license suspension, additional cost, and collection fees by having a longer period to comply with court orders. We also allow defendants to do community service for payment of their fine only. It's community services accredited against their fine for about $8 an hour. Allowing defendants to satisfy the fine through the community service gives the defendant flexibility of serving the sentence and allows those that have few resources to meet their fine obligation. We partner with many volunteer organizations. Really, they just call us. We have a list that we provide them, but if they call us and say, hey, I want to do this, volunteer, do you mind? As long as they're a 501c3, we're good. I mean, we make it really flexible.
Courtney, I was just going to thank you. You kind of were reading my mind. But just to make sure, too, are there opportunities for people, who maybe work day or night or weekends? I mean, just to make it equitable for everyone, are there several options for community service?
Yeah, and a lot of times, Lord Steiner's a big one for them, or the food bank. If they work on the weekends, food bank, Lord Steiner is great. And then if they work during the week and need a weekend, they'll go to churches. A lot of churches will need them to help them clean or pick up trash or dust or whatever. We just ask that it not be a part of their Sunday service part. But other than that, yeah, we're really flexible in getting them to help. We also partner with Center of Hope is for driver's license suspension, and then we also do some with DCF. Oh, okay. They go through their whole program, and once they provide that certificate, we will work with them to get their driver's license back. So we've been working with them for a while now to get them for those folks that go through that whole program and get them to go towards their fines. They'll call us and say, hey, what do I have on their fines? And we make sure that if they do have something, we apply it towards their fines and costs. Yeah. And then the last one I'll talk about is no probation violations for court costs and fines. We do not issue violations for any non-payment of court costs or fines. Probation is there to help them with their education, treatment, getting them employed. We really do a social work kind of roundabout way if we can to help them. We work with Workforce Center. We get them to job fairs if we can, just to get them on their feet and get them back and in being successful citizens in the community. Any questions?
No question, but that's great. And if you ever need community service stuff, neighborhood cleanups are perfect.
Yeah, we should. That's a good one. We can put flyers out for that. That's great.
4 hours on a Saturday morning.
Yes. And Saturdays are hard for people to find community service to do for those. Great idea. I'll put some flyers up. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Courtney. I have the pleasure of closing out today's workshop, and I want to share with you a program that the city manager brought to our attention, staff's attention in 2020. And it's a Durham, North Carolina program that focuses on expunging and helping restore driver's licenses. So the Durham, North Carolina Expunction and Restoration Program strategies include an expunction program that addresses potential barriers to employment and housing. It also provides free legal services to Durham residents who cannot afford an attorney to help them with their expungement or with the reinstatement process. We've had staff has had conversations with the folks involved in this program, and what we heard from them is that prior to this program, there wasn't a systemic mechanism in place within the court system to provide this sort of legal relief. You may recall here locally, we do a number of amnesty programs where we've had clean slate days, one-off type programs. One of the benefits of looking at this type of approach is that it really is a systemic model. It's an ongoing program to provide people with ongoing services that addresses their need. DARE was created in 2018 by an advisory board of criminal justice stakeholders. They convened to design a court referral expunction program. The advisory board is jointly chaired by judges. There's a judge that focuses on the expungement piece, as well as a judge that focuses on the reinstatement piece. The role of the board is to provide general direction and guidance to the DARE program while holding the program accountable to its goals and an equity framework. DARE partners include the City of Durham, Durham's District Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, the court system itself, as well as community organizations and local law schools. This slide shares some of the program's goals, tools, and strategies. As I mentioned earlier, the expunction program works to identify parties in the court system eligible for expunctions in real time at the disposition of their case and provide them with timely legal relief through a referral to a coordinated work of legal service providers. The DL Restoration Program works to resolve old traffic charges that are causing long-term driver's license suspensions for Durham residents. One of the great things about these programs, once again, it's not a one-off program, and there's an ongoing review. As it relates to the driver's license reinstatement program, it doesn't require action by a resident or a person whose license has been suspended. The court, through this program, periodically reviews its DL suspensions and determines which ones are appropriate for reinstatement or for relief. The expungement program primarily focuses on nonviolent felony and misdemeanor convictions. Also, one of the key features of the DARE model is a user-friendly webpage that not only provides information about the program and eligibility guidelines, there's an online application form as well. This slide shows the core components of the DARE program, focusing on expungements. The first box talks about certificates released. Consider that to what we locally do as far as paroling fines and fees. So in Durham, as a part of their program, they will not only review the driver's license suspension, but what fines and fees are outstanding, and if appropriate, whether to issue a certificate of relief absolving the driver from having that court-ordered obligation. You'll see a court referral process. Court partners in Durham proactively work to refer eligible individuals to DARE offices. DARE offices are comprised they have dedicated staff funded by the local government, but there also are volunteers, local law schools, community partners doing pro bono work. So it really is a full-scale approach, a community-involved approach to addressing a community problem. The last slide I have here focuses on, I believe, the opportunity we have here in Wichita. I believe a number of you have heard from community partners, stakeholders concerned with the impact that driver's license suspensions and old criminal charges may have on a person's livelihood, their ability to obtain employment, their ability to drive to employment, their ability to obtain housing. And so there's an opportunity to use this type of model to address local issues that we face here in Wichita. As Courtney mentioned during her presentation, recent changes in Kansas state law now provides us with tools that we haven't had in the past. Up until, I believe, last year, municipal court could address its local fines, but judges did not have the authority to address state-ordered reinstatement fees. And oftentimes, those reinstatement fees are far more costly than the base fine or the ticket that was originally issued. Now, through changes in statute, upon a finding of manifest hardship, as was mentioned earlier, court judges have the ability to waive those fines and those obligations, those driver's license reinstatement fees. Some work that we've done so far, and we've been working on this going back to the summer of 2020. Vice Mayor Johnson was kind enough to sit on a call that I had last July with representatives of Durham, and they shared with us their experience and the benefit of their program. Coming out of that call, some of the work we've done through the pandemic is engage municipal court and district court judges in a conversation as to if this program would be worth pursuing and potentially implementing here locally. We've also had conversations with Kansas Legal Services, the Wichita Bar Association, and several local attorneys who are interested in addressing the impact old criminal charges and traffic cases have on a person's life. Our proposed next steps is to formalize these informal discussions that we've had to date. Let's bring together a group of stakeholders, district court, municipal court, Wichita Bar Association, those that are, as well as community members that are affected by current processes, who can help us develop a program that meets their needs. Great opportunity. I think there's a great program that could be a model in the city of Wichita. It's also an opportunity for us to create an advisory board similar to Durham, North Carolina, that helps guide this work in an ongoing effort. A few challenges that we have locally, and it's nothing that we can't overcome. It's more barriers that need to be addressed than something that's fatal to this type of program. Is different than what Durham encounters or how they handle expungements. State law and local ordinance requires a waiting period for expungements in some cases, 5 years, 10 years, depending on the charge. So we'll have to work with our legal department to see what our options are in regards to expunging cases in a timely manner. Our local policy also has a filing fee per police case. And so the cost of an expungement could be a barrier potentially to receiving this sort of service. So it's great that we're bringing attorneys to bear that can help guide them through the process. But if we don't do something about the filing fees, we're going to be limited in the ability to impact those that would benefit from this sort of program. So, just wanted to share with you some of the things that we're working on, we continue to work on to address some of the concerns that I know you all are hearing. If you have any questions about this or anything else related, please let me know.
Just want to mention, we packaged this together because what we're trying to do are address people who are in crisis or who have difficulties because of income limitations, as well as maybe conditions that they're wrestling with, whether it's a mental health condition, whether it's substance abuse. And we're trying to provide the right resources, whether it's through the police department or the tools we put in place with municipal court to try to get people to be productive residents, right? And to help them maybe turn the corner because of some difficulties or barriers that have been placed on them because of their constant interaction with the courts. And you know, it was really eye-opening for me. A number of years ago, Dante and I sat through some discussions with residents who were without work because they didn't have a driver's license, and the fines continued to increase, or the penalties continued to increase. And these are people that wanted to work, in many cases, in order to support their family, drove without a license while suspended, then got picked up, and then had more financial burden, and they talk about the hopelessness of the situation. And so what we're trying to do is address those issues through our systems, not forgiving the underlying violations, but trying to prevent them from getting into a situation where it's almost impossible to be able to move forward. So, and again, last year we heard a lot about the need to help our police department and provide them the right services embedded in the department, and that's what you heard from Deputy Chief Pinkston, that we've, I think, made a lot of progress. But the department was already moving in that direction, but we've done a lot in the last year. So that's kind of my summary about why we put this all together.
Bob, just a quick comment. I want to applaud you for bringing this program to us. I think it's really forward-thinking and forward-leading, and thank you to Dante for all your work on it as well. Durham, I think, is a community of about 250,000. Did they give you, or do we have any estimate of how many people would be impacted by this? I don't know that. I don't know how many people are in this situation, but just for curiosity, I'd like to know. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Tuttle. I don't have exact data, but based on recent reports and my time spent as court administrator, and keep in mind I've been in the manager's office for close to 5 years now, we probably have in the neighborhood of 30,000 plus driver's license suspensions. Keep in mind, although those suspensions have been reported to Topeka, it could be really old cases. So we don't know if the person is still in the community. We don't know if the person is still driving, is still in need of reinstatement. But so there's the opportunity as it relates to driver's license reinstatement. As it applies to expungement, anyone with a municipal court conviction potentially is eligible for an expungement. So if the court adjudicates 50,000 plus cases, at some point in time, those that are convicted in municipal court are eligible for some expunction service.
Thank you. Much more than I thought, so very impactful. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Manager, as we start to look towards better ways to approach, I think some of these issues that we've seen with our justice system, as we move forward, last week I was at a neighborhood association in District 2, neighborhood association meeting. And there was a woman there who I've seen quite a bit who is ongoing community activist and involved in our community. She's 74 years old. She lives alone. She has right now no running water and no electricity going to her house. My understanding is she got a ticket for having more than 2 dogs, maybe, that were in violation or didn't have a special license. She had a few driving on suspension, I think citations. She's someone who has ongoing mental health issues. Again, she's in her 70s. On Friday, I heard she was booked in our county jail. And in addition to her ongoing mental health situation and not being able to afford running water or electricity, our municipal court stacked up multiple fees, thousands of dollars worth of court fees, and which worries me when we think about someone who's nonviolent, someone who's in their 70s, someone who's ongoing mental health issues, who this weekend spent that time in jail. When we think about our DUI folks who get a hotel room for a therapeutic alternative. So I'm hoping that moving forward, because this is how I believe people wind up homeless, is continuation of these fees. They wind up losing their house, and I'm hoping as we dive into these best practices, we can also look more broadly at some of the issues that we're seeing that might not make it to, might not be covered by some of these changes. And I would love to perhaps get a study or an audit, particularly when it comes to our senior citizens who wind up in these situations within our city, to see if it is an ongoing issue and what the best practices are. It seems that Durham is giving us a best practice in this case, but it would be worth, I think, our time to expand what those best practices are to get a better benefit for our whole community.
There are a lot of issues wrapped up on all that, and I appreciate you sharing that with me yesterday. This case is a little unique in that this individual was actually arrested by the county on district court charges initially, and then served with a warrant on outstanding city charges. But I think you bring up a good point regarding here's a person who probably does have some underlying mental health issues that need to be addressed. And we've got staff that can talk about how that's addressed already, because we recognize there are extenuating circumstances. And we can also talk about what we do for people who are arrested on the weekends and what our normal process is in place. Again, this was a little out of our jurisdiction because it was handled by the county and district court, not by municipal court and our police department. But Dante, you want to talk real briefly about how a situation like that it would be handled and the kind of resources that and the things that judges look for?
Again, Mayor, to address the specific issue you mentioned, and the manager is correct, the person was arrested by the sheriff's office and booked into jail. Standard process is the sheriff's office is going to look to see what outstanding warrants exist and serve those warrants on behalf of the area municipalities. As it relates to the municipal court cases, she was issued an OR bond, so when the district court was ready to release her from jail, she was also issued an OR bond on recognizance bond and given a court date. And so during her time at the jail has processes in place, if they are aware, to triage people with unique needs and try to connect them with resources, have that first opportunity of intervention, bring ComCare in if necessary, if appropriate. If that doesn't occur at the jail, and thank you for once again bringing this to our attention, as the municipal court has contact, there is also an opportunity to connect defendants or people appearing in court with necessary services to address their challenges that they're facing. From a macro perspective, the manager mentioned several years ago, 2015, 2016 it was, and I think Courtney referred to this earlier, if a person is booked into jail on municipal court charges that are not a threat to self or community, and they're able to prove who they are, provide ID, generally folks are OR, they're released from jail given a court date. We want to reduce the number of commitments to our local jail. We also want to reduce the impact to our residents who at that point are innocent until proven guilty. So there's an adjudication process that has to take place. I want to dig further into the case that you brought to my attention. Typically, I realize that there may be fines or fees assessed to a case, but those don't become due until the case is adjudicated. So a person being OR'd from jail at this point doesn't have fines owed. There's still a need to adjudicate the case. So I don't have the specifics around the case. I'll dig further into it and provide more information to you. But to your point, and Courtney detailed the number of court programs that we have available. The big thing that we try to do is connect people with resources that come in contact with our staff, with community resources that are available to them, any type of support resources that we have access to. Generally, most often that's ComCare, but if there's a unique need or a specialized need, we attempt to make contact or connect that person with community-based services as best we can.
And I appreciate you looking into this individual case. And it's good to know that it wasn't the city who I think spearheaded the arrest of a nonviolent senior and possibly bankrupts them with fees. I just want to, as we move forward, I understand the process that is taking place. I think, though, as we question best practices, is there something we can be doing to ensure our nonviolent senior citizens aren't arrested, denied their liberties for days on end, and then possibly bankrupt with court fees? And how often is this? This is unique. I have the benefit where folks are actually giving me somewhat of an update on this, and according to a third party, this person pled guilty to charges to get out, but she doesn't recall it, doesn't remember it at all. She obviously wasn't in the right mind for that. So my goal is to, first determine, is this something that as we look towards our justice system, that and changes, something that we can impact to ensure that we are treating our nonviolent senior citizens who have code violations, as humanely as possible.
Thank you, Mayor. As I said earlier, I'll look more closely at that case, but also at the larger issue that you're bringing to the table.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Bob, Dante, everyone, especially Bob, bringing this program to us. I think this really responds well to what we heard last summer from several groups on various sides of everything, making sure that law enforcement had different support, making sure we had social workers, mental health workers, and then the sustainable restorative justice program like DEAR. I think these are all the right steps to take. And it sounds like it can be really beneficial, especially with suspended driver's licenses. And I know that from the expungement workshop that happened, I think in 2015, there's a lot of demand for that. So I just appreciate all of this work and laying that foundation and the response from last year. And I think we're all on the right track.
Not only do I want to thank all of the staff that you've heard from that have been involved, but I also want to thank Judge Jones, the municipal court judges, who have been very supportive of this type of initiative. And I want to thank the county, especially for the partnership we've had on CommCare services. We couldn't do it without those partnerships.
Is there further discussion on this?
Mayor, that's all we have for today.
Excellent. Well, if there's no objection, then we'll adjourn. No objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.